kids, they've always got snot coming out of their face somewhere.
Yeah. Well,
Snot,
I do now.
saliva, just.
Disgusting creatures.
I was getting ready to say disgusting creatures. Really are.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is James. I have a little bit of a sinus issue, as usual. Tony's been hunting, so direct all your angry comments toward him. I have not been hunting. I went fishing, but didn't catch anything this year. Not even a single fish, hardly. So my conscience is clear in that regard.
Bambi's parents seemed like assholes, and I want to murder them. And I want to show Bambi their corpses when I'm done. So that's all I have to say about that. I hope that's not too inhumane.
I think, according to the rules of life, it has to be, you have to chase them down, right? Isn't that how the Native Americans did it?
That's how I did it.
You chase them down until they get exhausted?
Well, I'm a felon, so I can't use a gun, so I have a shovel. I've used a shovel for years. I just chase them down and shovel them to death.
Shurikens.
It was my grandfather's shovel. He passed it down to me. He was a felon. My dad was a felon, so it's just the family shovel. Shurikens.
Just piss it off. It'd probably attack you.
Yeah, you get some horny buck that's still got his testosterone up, and I guess it's happened. I've had them walk right up on me before. Like, he's just standing out there waiting, and they walk within, I think 20 feet is probably the closest one ever come. It was just wild, just having this big fucking buck like walk right up to you. Almost.
Yeah, because they have to smell you. They can't really see you that good, I think, right?
Well, if they're like really caught up right in the middle of the rut, they're so horny they don't care. And they'll hear
about the females now or the males?
The males.
Oh.
If they hear something moving or some weird smell, it's like they're not paying. The only thing they're focused on is the smell or the sound of a female, and they don't care whatsoever if they smell humans or nothing like that. They're on a mission. It's like a.
Are you allowed to shoot the females?
Yeah. In Kentucky, you can shoot four deer, one antlered. So.
Now, as a sort of like as a somebody who's trained in the culinary arts, we both are really. You would typically want to eat the younger males, right? You don't want them when they're older because the meat's going to be tough and stringy and whatnot, right?
Yeah, any older male or in particular the older males, because I guess it has something to do with the testosterone, the way their muscles develop, especially when they get older. It's a lot tougher and stringier, and it has a lot more of a taste to it. Yeah, so I mean that's ideally.
Do you go after the younger ones, or do you go after the older ones for the antlers and whatnot?
I go after the one that walks in front of me.
Well, yeah, I guess
I'm indiscriminate.
What if you drive by and there's some on the side of the road? Do you go after them?
No, I would. I seen a guy the other day. I just happened to pass him. He had this old beat up pickup truck, and he'd stopped it, and I'd seen him walking around back with a hacksaw. I was like, "What the fuck?" And then I get on the other side of the truck, and there was a dead buck with its antlers there, and he stopped to pull over, get out with a hacksaw. I guess I hopefully just cut the antlers off. Huh?
Did he hit the thing, or did somebody else?
No. It looked like it'd been laying there for maybe a day or so.
Well, you can't mount somebody else's kill, can you? That's blasphemy.
That's what I feel like. It's lying almost. It is lying. It's false representation, false advertising.
That seems wrong. I don't know.
It
goes against the hunter's code.
I agree, but he could be maybe somebody that makes stuff out of deer antler. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe he's a knife maker. He's a famous bladesmith, and he needed some quality deer antler to finish off the handle.
Fair enough. I think the antlers fall off though. There's probably no shortage of antlers.
Yeah, they do.
Is that right? Don't they fall off every year? Yeah.
They're really difficult to find though, and they get eaten up because they've got so much calcium in them. kind of all the little forest critters will come and eat them really quickly after they've been shed.
Interesting. That's gross,
Yeah.
but interesting.
Yeah.
Well, I've been following these two trials, of course, because this is what I enjoy. I don't know why. I just enjoy it. Have you watched either one of them at all?
I kept up with the Rittenhouse one. I haven't really been checking out the Ahmaud Arbery one yet.
Well, deliberations for that trial start Monday. I just have one clip from the Ahmaud Arbery trial. The production value hasn't been as high. It's an interesting case to watch, though. They don't have the lawyers. The back and forth between the lawyers is interesting. They have this female prosecutor. She's very, I don't know what word would best describe her. She's not very likable, though. I don't know if she's going to do the state any favors. She is not very likable. She's like a...
Is she shrill, Jane?
Yeah.
Is she shrill? Is she... Yeah.
She's like the mean substitute teacher or something. I don't know how to describe her. Here is one of the defense attorneys.
Third parties are influenced in this case. They've been doing it from the gallery in this courtroom.
He's talking about Al Sharpton and some other folks that have been hanging out like in the courtroom in the back.
Doing it outside. This is what a public lynching looks like in the 21st century, with all due respect. They don't have to have 10,000 people outside. They don't have to have 100,000 people outside. Perception is reality.
I have to point out here that this is not what a public lynching looks like. I mean, you have a client accused of a crime. He's not going to be lynched, though. I mean, there's just some black guys in the audience, that's all. Not that big of a deal, really.
We have sealed these jurors off. We hope we have. We have sealed them off. And it doesn't matter how many people are outside. It doesn't matter how violent they appear to be. It doesn't take much. Just because they haven't put a gallery up, they haven't put a podium up outside with a hangman's noose on it, doesn't mean that this isn't a trial, despite the best efforts of this court. This isn't a trial that's been infected by mob violence of a woke left mob.
It's so ironic, isn't it? His client is being convicted of a public lynching, basically.
Yeah,
he is complaining. He's complaining about the woke left mob, like publicly lynching his client. It's hilarious.
It's a difficult one because, like, you don't want protesters outside the courthouse during a trial. You don't want famous figures like, first, Al Sharpton's just a con man anyways. I don't think he's ever done a valuable thing in his life. But people like him that are going to garner attention, it's kind of like there's nothing, you can't stop because you don't want to be influencing. You want prosecutors, judges, jurors to follow the letter of the law as best they can and to be as impartial as possible. But I mean, there's nothing really that you can do in these situations. Like, I guess try to discourage it. You try to make the venue somewhere where you're not going to have that stuff going on. But I don't know. It's a weird one. Somebody's going to have to figure it out at some point.
I don't know. I think it is an issue in this trial. I mean, Al Sharpton was sitting back there with his mask down, like the jurors could see him, presumably. I'm guessing they could see him. That's got to influence them. Yeah. But they're not. The jury's not sequestered in this trial, so they're watching the news and shit anyway. So
you don't want the jurors or anybody to be influenced by public pressure. I mean, I guess that's what he's getting at. He's convicted in the court of public opinion. You want to keep that court of public opinion separate from the actual juror box.
Travis McMichael did testify too. The cross-examination took a day and a half. Pretty interesting to watch. Ooh. Seems like he's in trouble, man. I think he's in trouble.
It seems like a long time.
What happened was
cover. He does not look like an intelligent fellow.
He's pretty smart, actually. He's
is he?
I mean, his dad was a police officer for like 8 years or something like that. So they were trying to play that whole card. Like what the defense attorneys are arguing in this case is that it was an attempt at a citizen's arrest. But the problem with that is there's no testimony that they ever said that up until the trial, basically. It's sort of a defense they made up. now, recently. So seems like they're in some hot water, man.
Yeah.
And it sucks for the dad, kind of, because he didn't really do anything, did he? I mean, he was in the truck.
Well, it could be aiding and abetting the what is it? Committing a felony. Essentially, you aid and abet a felon.
I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know how.
Accessory. I mean, I'm
Each-
sure if it were me, they would find some. They would find something.
Oh,
to charge
sure,
me with.
yeah,
Of course. I was driving the truck.
And this, if you can't tell, this is John Kennedy's brother, Senator John Kennedy. It's not really. It just looks like him.
It does.
I had to play this John Kennedy clip. I love this. I'm sure you've seen this, but let's check it out
It's
again
recognized
anyway.
for 5 minutes.
She is this nominee for the comptroller, and of course they're being. She has to be approved, so everybody's grilling her.
Good morning, Professor.
Good morning.
I just love the way John Kennedy talks. I don't know. He just has a certain appeal. He's like a used car salesman or something. He's such a hustler.
You used to be a member of a group called the Young Communist, didn't you?
Senator, are you referring to my membership in the Youth Communist Organization while I was growing up in the Soviet Union?
I don't know. I wanted to ask you that question.
Well, Senator,
There was a group called the Young Communists, and you were a member. Is that right?
It's so slimy because he's like, I don't want you to explain. I just want you to give a yes or no answer.
Yeah.
Well, she goes on to say this was the name of her elementary school, basically. Is all it is.
What was that? The Young Commies?
Well, yeah, she grew up in the Soviet Union.
Oh, okay.
That's why it's so slimy.
This guy, I remember there was this other YouTube channel that was really great, and I feel like they put up some deep faked images of him. It was fantastic. I wonder whatever happened to those guys.
Yeah, that's a good question. So it fell through the cracks, huh?
Fell through the cloud.
So you did watch the Rittenhouse trial, or I'm sure you at least watched the reading of the verdict, right?
Yeah, I watched. Kind of caught the highlight reel, I guess.
Yeah. Very entertaining case. They had some high-powered defense attorneys.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty. As to the second count of the information, Richard McGinnis, we, the jury, find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty. As to the third count of the information, unknown male, we, the jury, find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty. As to the fourth count of the information, Anthony Huber, we, the jury, find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty. As to the fifth count of the information,
That's got to be a great feeling right there.
we, the jury, find the defendant.
You know what pisses me off about this? Me or you could commit any crime. Like, we could commit shoplifting, and there's no way we could ever get off on any of it. He kills 2.5 people and gets off on all of it. He doesn't even get... They dropped the frickin' curfew charge and they dropped the gun charge. He didn't get anything. He just walked.
Yeah.
Just walked scot-free, dude. Unbelievable.
I don't know. I mean, do you feel, what do you feel like should have happened? I mean, do you feel there was enough evidence to get him with something, or?
Well, here's the problem. The prosecution came up with this whole provocation theory midway through the trial. They should have started from the beginning, but the problem is they didn't have any evidence whatsoever really at the beginning of the trial. There was some other footage that came out that corroborated that, because there was already the guy in the yellow pants testify, or he didn't testify, but you could see him in the videos talking about the fact that Rittenhouse was pointing his gun at people who were causing property damage, which is illegal and could be construed as, that's provocation right there. And apparently he did that either to the yellow pants guy or to somebody, and the yellow pants guy saw it. But there's also this grainy ass footage they drug up of Rittenhouse pointing his gun at Rosenbaum right before Rosenbaum starts going off.
Yeah. So.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. So I know about some of this. I mean, the yellow pants guy, there's just a guy saying stuff, right? It's not
Rittenhouse walks by him, and he says, and this is when Rittenhouse is going, anybody need medical? Anybody need medical? And Yellow Pants guy's like, hey, you're the guy that was pointing your gun at them people over there that were jumping on that car or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's, and Rittenhouse, when he was cross-examined, tried to say that he was being sarcastic when he said, when he said whatever he said.
Yeah.
So really, that's not strong evidence. But that, in addition, there's also the grainy drone footage, which they drug up halfway through the trial.
Yeah.
But it was so shitty of footage that it was really hard to tell what was going on. That's the problem. That video.
That was probably why it wasn't admitted into evidence.
It was admitted into evidence. And the jury, in fact, asked to see it a few more times.
Yeah.
And the prosecutor went over it a bunch in the trial. But the problem is, like I said, you can't see it very well. It's really shitty.
Yeah.
But circumstantially, if you watch the actual ultimate gas altercation, it seems like that's exactly what happened. It seems like Rittenhouse points his gun at Rosenbaum, and then Rosenbaum goes off and starts saying, shoot me, N-word, shoot me. Well, it seems pretty clear cut to me.
So that was the beginning, like one version of the beginning of the Rosenbaum Rittenhouse altercation. It seems like, I guess from some of the other testimony, that Rosenbaum had been, I guess, agitated for most of the night, had been saying crazy shit, acting crazy, being aggressive and weird towards people. I mean, he was just, what was I reading earlier? He was like hours before released from, I just found this earlier. But no, never mind.
Well, he was fresh out of jail, and supposedly his girlfriend testified that he just got out of the hospital, but there's no evidence of that. So it seems like he just got out of jail.
Okay, that's what I was getting at, yeah. He just got out of jail. It's...
He hadn't got aggressive with anybody else all night. It wasn't until Rittenhouse pointed his gun at him and threatened him because he was damaging property. Rittenhouse pointed his gun at him, but there's not really any good footage of it. It seems like it. If you watch the ultimate gas altercation...
I mean, but if there's no good footage of it, it's not something that you can pen a verdict on. I mean, if it's not good footage...
that's the problem.
Yeah, and... I mean...
Now, what if... I don't know what they would have... If there was clear evidence that Rittenhouse pointed his gun at him, that would be provocation. I don't know exactly how the law works in that case, but I believe the prosecution would have got some kind of conviction off of that.
Yeah, if he had unprovoked pointed the gun at Rosenbaum first, and that's what set Rosenbaum off.
I want to show this to you and see what you think.
Okay.
And I cannot find the full video. The full video they played in trial is much longer, and it shows the beginning of it, but it doesn't show Rittenhouse. He's off screen to the left.
I mean, because most of this trial come down to, was Rittenhouse committing a crime and being there, or at some point prior to the engagement? That's, if he's there committing a crime, he can't say, well, I was defending myself, and you wouldn't have any legal standing to defend yourself at that point.
Well, the prosecution made the case that Rittenhouse left the property he was supposed to be defending, right? He's supposed to be defending these guys' property. He left the property to go with the mob because the mob was getting pushed past the property he was supposed to defend. So he went with the mob to try to start shit and to get to be in the middle of the action, basically.
Yeah, so that's the big thing that I don't know. I've been trying to figure out exactly why he did that. Why did he leave to go with the mob instead of staying there? Because that's his whole argument. If his argument was, hey, this person called me, I drove there to help defend this place in case there was any rioters or anybody trying to cause damage to this property, I'm still saying, hey, dude, you're 17. You need to stay home. Let adults handle that. It's not something for a 17-year-old kid to be doing. But you still have a good argument then, if the altercation happened at the property that he was supposed to be at. But leaving it to go with the mob, that's the one thing that kind of really makes me doubt the verdict to any degree, I guess.
He wanted to start shit. He wanted to, you know what I mean? He wanted to be in the action, and For one,
yeah, and he did.
as the prosecutor pointed out, it's actually illegal to use lethal force to defend property. So they, none of them should have been armed if they were there to defend property. They should have been armed with non-lethals, if anything. Let me play this. Like I said, I can't find the full footage, but suffice it to say that right prior to this, Rosenbaum is just acting kind of normal. He's just like walking around talking to people, and then all of a sudden, he snaps because something happens off screen. What happens is Rittenhouse off to the left here points his gun at him. This is exactly how I would act at his age if someone had pointed a freaking AR at me. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Rittenhouse is off to the left here. Who else is? What is he even? Who's he talking to? Besides, who else would he be talking to? That's exactly the reaction I would expect. Because his buddy here pulled it. He didn't pull it, but he had a gun in his hand, and they're saying that Rittenhouse pointed his gun at these guys because he saw Travis McGinnis here, this guy with his pistol. Seems to me like that's exactly what happened, dude. There just wasn't good footage of it, enough to convict him, apparently.
Yeah.
Like I said, the longer video, it's a lot more clear when you see the longer video, but I couldn't find it anywhere. The only time I saw it was in the trial. Anyway.
Yeah, anyway. Yeah, I've
Get
watched,
off, man.
I don't know. This should have been something that I prepared for, but I'd watched the Young Turks coverage of the verdict being read. I don't know if you ever watched them. I think they're one of the biggest jokes in left-wing media, I feel like. And John Iadaroto was, yeah, I knew you would, but John just goes off about all. I don't know, it's just the implications of this that Jink gives a very reason we probably.
I can pull it up and we can look at it if you want to.
Days and over 25 hours of deliberations. The panel also cleared him of attempted intentional homicide for severely wounding Gage Grosskreutz, a 27-year-old paramedic from suburban Milwaukee who was there that night volunteering his medical services. Rittenhouse was also acquitted on 2 counts of recklessly endangering safety. I mean, they say there that he's a paramedic, but he wasn't holding an assault rifle, so he doesn't seem like an authentic medic in this context. In any event, we want to show you a little bit from the announcement.
As to the first count of the information, Joseph Rosenbaum. We, the jury, find the defendant, Kyle H. Rittenhouse, not guilty.
Agree with the verdicts as read. Would you wish the jury polled?
So, bearing in mind that previously they had gotten some sort of length technicality that got rid of the weapons charge, from the perspective of our judicial system, he did nothing wrong. Absolutely nothing wrong.
Okay, yeah, right there. First off, they're not saying he didn't do anything wrong. They're saying that he wasn't.
He said from the perspective
guilty
of our judicial system.
They're not even saying from the perspective. The judicial system is not saying he did nothing wrong. They're saying that he was not guilty of the charges he was charged with. I mean, I don't think anybody from the prosecutor, judge, his defense attorney, any of them.
Well, they dropped the
would say that
they dropped the lessers, right?
Yeah, that's all. You've been through this stuff before. I've been through it. There's all sorts of little legalistic reasons that they drop these minor charges through the process.
Well, this isn't an opinion show.
It's hard for you or I to
say. It's TYT. I mean,
yeah. I understand. I agree. It's a garbage network. But all right, we're both in agreement on that.
I disagree. I think they do a good job.
But
is there more? Or is that it?
Yeah. Just play a little bit more.
Okay.
He shouldn't have made any different choices. Everything he did is fine, and that is, unfortunately, I think, the lesson that some individuals are going to take away from this. If you had had an interest in grabbing a gun and going somewhere and ending up in some sort of situation, well, you can now be assured on 2 things. You already knew that you'd be able to raise millions of dollars to crowdsource your defense. You'd become a celebrity on the right, and now you've been told by the state that it's probably totally fine legally too. So I know.
So that
Yeah,
last point there, sure, but I mean the other 2 points he's right, really.
He was right in this case. I mean, this just happened to get blown up because it was right after a big BLM protest. The idea that people are going to, I'm sure some people would be encouraged to go out and be vigilantes, but the fact that Ben Shapiro is going to come to your rescue and everything's going to be cool. Is anybody really thinking that? Anybody that's not already completely mentally ill?
You don't think this is going to push some people over the edge? Oh, I was going to bring my rifle, but now I definitely am to the protest or whatever, to counter protest.
No, people that were going to bring the rifle are going to bring the rifle.
Yeah, maybe you're right.
I don't think
it's super important.
The type of people that are going to go there anyways. I don't think this is going to have very little. And hopefully, the media can actually get into all the legal arguments and explain why this case was decided this way instead of just doing how it's done on both sides. That, well, he was just there because he hated black people and he wanted to shoot some protesters, or on the right saying, well, he's a hero that was going there protecting us. Just treat everybody like adults. Explain all the legalistic stuff that people like you, I, and most people don't understand about why these lesser charges were dropped. I mean, was it because they're wanting to throw them a bone and help them out, and this is all complicated, and it doesn't fit into a 30-second news story.
I think, for one, they could have got him if the prosecution had done a better job from the beginning, like I said. And for two, if this was anybody else except for frickin' Rittenhouse, they would have got hammered, dude.
I mean, a lot of it come down to just money, right? I mean,
he had good lawyers, damn good.
Yeah, well, I mean, he got funded because
and the judge was
because this became a political thing,
right?
Just based on how it occurred, it got attention, and a bunch of right-wing figures got behind him and flooded money into his coffers, and he was able to get really good legal representation. I mean, should he get poor legal representation? Because that's what you or I would get. Well, I would hope that you and everyone could get decent legal representation. But I don't get the point that they're making with this. What's
the point is, if this was a black guy who had showed up to a KKK rally, shot 2 people, there's no way he'd be getting off. That's the point, right? There's a double standard.
I don't know. I mean, if the guy had the same amount of representation, maybe. I don't know. If the exact same thing happened,
I think the black guy would have got killed, probably, is what would have happened.
Yeah, most likely. But, I mean, then you're talking about a different situation.
Sure. The only point I want to make is, anybody who watched that Jacob Blake video and then decided to go counter-protest, you're the biggest piece of shit I've ever met. That's all I can say. That's the only thing I take away from the whole situation. Yeah. I just watch these trials for the entertainment value, mostly.
Yeah. It seems like he was to certain. I don't know his motives in going there, and whether he planned on getting out into the crowd when he left the house that day, or if it was something that happened spur of the moment, or if there was something that made him walk out into the crowd. It's kind of impossible to say. Everything's just kind of speculation at that point. And yeah, maybe he was just being a complete shithead that wanted to go there and counter protest. I was a shithead at 17 too, so
yeah.
That's just a young boy, and I could have easily seen myself doing this exact same thing.
Well, there's pictures. He took selfies with the Proud Boys during the trial and stuff.
Yeah.
Venezuela is holding elections today for the first time in 4 years, I think.
Hang on, I thought they were a communist dictatorship.
Well,
no,
they are, but this one time they have elections this one time.
This one, okay. All right, continue.
And they actually have international monitors from the European Union there also to supersede any sort of claims of like you said, of voter issues.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like Maduro's going to hold free and fair elections. They have put tons of voting booths out everywhere. He's trying to get people out to vote. It's sort of like the United States, I imagine, where you want the more people who vote, the better for the sort of Labor Party, right?
I was going to say, no, you don't want people voting in the U.S. You want easy access voting for some people, but not for those other people. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge.
Yeah, this New York Times piece, they have a piece on it, but it's It's basically like an opposition op-ed wrote it. It's so biased, dude. It's unbelievable. And they don't mention the multiple coups leading up to this or any of the opposition money flowing in to the opposition candidate from the United States and the European Union and everywhere else.
Yeah.
They don't mention the, like, bombs the Colombian government was trying to smuggle in through, like, these food caravans.
Well, they were probably very forgettable bombs. Let's be honest. It's hard to remember when you're writing an article about it.
I don't understand why the New York Times cares. I mean, I guess they don't want to lose their connections in the government, right? That's a lot of it.
I don't know. I think a lot of these things just come down to they're tailoring the story for what the audience wants to hear. Most people don't know anything about Venezuela, and they have an idea in their mind of what the story is supposed to be like, a Venezuelan election, and you got an article just tailored to fit nicely into the Venezuela election brain hole that the average reader is going to have.
That's a good point. Yeah, that's a good point.
It's just laziness, really.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you are interested in nootropics, check out my website, MetaMaxPerformance.com. We have 1 week left for free shipping. 1 week left. Get it while it lasts. MetaMaxPerformance.com.
ShowerHempFarms.com, your number one source for CBD and Delta 8 products. Come on over. We have slash prices on our Delta 8 vape carts for a limited time only. Get them at near wholesale pricing. ShowerHempFarms.com, support local farms and your own Kentucky growers. Shower Hemp Farms.
Anybody paying attention? Am I doing it right?
All right.
Good stuff.
I want to talk about these far left activists who are bursting on the scene, getting a ton of attention, actually. People like, for example, Jimmy Dore. He's actually got a huge following somehow. He's mostly just, like I said, anti-vax propaganda these days. If you look at his channel, I don't know if you've looked at it lately, but...
Oh yeah. I like to check in with Jimmy every once in a while to see the... yeah.
They all started in the same place. Let me just say that, first of all. All these guys I'm going to discuss sort of started in the TYT sort of network, like the normal left. And they started getting a bunch of attention by criticizing the left, and some of them really went deep, like Jimmy Dore. He brutally criticizes like AOC and Rashida Tlaib, right?
Yeah, I think Jimmy, of the four characters you have mentioned, Jimmy kind of stands apart in my mind from the rest of them.
Somewhat.
All he does. There's not even an attempt at a good argument from Jimmy. It's just him getting drunk and yelling. And it's intellectual laziness that it's now you and I are going to disagree about some of these guys, but
he went on Tucker Carlson like twice.
You and I would disagree about some of these guys, but I think at least the other three make coherent arguments. Now, whether we could disagree about whether those arguments are valid, but Jimmy just yells and acts like a complete idiot.
There are some things the other three say that I agree with.
Yeah.
Now, with Jimmy Dore, there's stuff he says that I agree with, but I don't think he really believes it. Like when he talks about Medicare for all, he thinks he tries to say he's for Medicare for all, but he tries to like tank the whole left wing. He's trying to force the vote and just like destroy the entire Progressive Party.
So
he says it, but I don't even think he believes it, dude.
I didn't when the whole force the vote thing came out, and it was a push to withhold for the Progressive Caucus to withhold
speakership for Pelosi, right?
The speakership for Pelosi, to affirming there's a word for it. Her as the Speaker of the House, unless she pushed to have Medicare for all put up for a vote. It's somebody that doesn't really know how these things work. That seemed like a perfectly logical thing for me. I don't understand why necessarily that was a bad tactic, but the way he held on to it after it clearly wasn't happening and started attacking everyone that wasn't 100% on board as being fake liberals, and even after it was like long dead, that's where Jimmy just really went off the rails. I mean, I've got no reason to think that he's not in favor of Medicare for all. I imagine he probably is, but I think Jimmy's a lot more in favor of himself and his own self-aggrandizement, which is what that whole thing ended up being about. Just him.
He's a complete and total cynic, man, in my opinion. As far as the force the vote thing, what he was trying to say was it would force out people's opinion to where you could see whether or not they were really for it if you force the vote. That's not what it would do at all. We know who's for it, and we know who's against it. And the people who are against it could vote for it just to get points in their column. They know it's not going to pass. It's a terrible strategy. It doesn't even make sense. And you don't if you're a progressive, you don't dive bomb the progressive caucus, especially the most progressive members of the caucus. You go hard at them. It doesn't even make sense. Okay.
I didn't know that. I don't know. I've heard stuff like that about the force the vote thing. I don't think Jimmy knew that. I don't think, so is it?
Well, that's the point he was making. That was the point he was making during the whole thing. He was trying to say that this way we can see who's really for it. But that's not how votes work.
Okay, but is it him being cynical, or is him just being stupid? Did he really not know, or did? Okay. So
everybody,
I don't know.
Everybody who's worked with him prior, says he's an asshole, and
well, he probably is an asshole. I mean, all I know of him, I would watch him on Young Turks back when I watched Young Turks, and he seemed to kind of go down the line with the Young Turks policies that they advocate, Medicare for all, higher taxes on the wealthy, just kind of all the boilerplate stuff that anyone on the left would advocate for. So, with that thing, I don't think he. I don't know if he's cynical or not. I think he's just dumb.
Did you see? You saw surely the thing last week where he made up this article, or he
Oh yes.
Rewrote this article to fit his narrative, his anti-vax narrative.
I don't. This will be another one. I know you and I disagree on this one, but I don't find any value in Sam Cedars' program except for when he shits on Dave Rubin and Jimmy Dore. When he does
don't forget Crowder.
When he does, or Crowder too. I don't see Crowder as much. It's mostly Rubin and Jimmy Dore. When he does one shitting on them, I inevitably will catch it. I just love it. I love just pushing these guys' faces at him. Jimmy Dore apparently it was he's claiming that it was a producer of his that he has since fired. Basically mutilated this article about COVID vaccines somewhere in Southeast Asia, Malaysia, Indonesia, one of them.
I thought it was Singapore.
Singapore, okay. Yeah, probably Singapore. And just kind of mutilated this article to added words, cut sentences out, added other sentences together to make it say something that it's not saying, that fit Jimmy Dore's narrative that vaccines don't work and they're not effective. And he got called out on it. And
had to retract, sort of.
He didn't even retract it, though, because he didn't
take the video down.
He was just acting like it was a mistake, and, we should have added parentheses around these, and, we shouldn't have jammed it together without putting the ... Well, I think it's exactly what he was saying. We should have put a ... between these two sentences, and we should have put parentheses in the word we added to clarify everything. But the words that they added didn't clarify, and the point of what he did wasn't that he wasn't using proper MLA format or it was incorrect formatting. It was that he was twisting the story to mean something to seem like it was saying something that it wasn't. And he did not retract any of that. Didn't apologize for any of that. Didn't try to.
You're right. In his whole, you're right. When he covered it the second time, he didn't mention the fact that after they edited it, it said the opposite of what it originally said.
Yeah,
Bring that
was
part
the
up.
point. Yeah,
You're right.
People were not mad about. People weren't mad about the lack of parentheses or the lack of the ... It was, yeah.
That's what Trump would have done. Fire the guy, right? Fire some producer.
Well, so here's the thing. I don't think anybody knows if it actually was a producer. The scuttlebutt on the internet is that it was either Jimmy or Jimmy's wife that did this article up, and there's some fake producer, that has never been named and has not come out that was fired. And this is, I guess, based off people that know him and know that, it's not a big operation. It's basically just him and his wife doing this stuff. I guess these are kind of like close circle communities, and nobody knows who this producer is or could be.
All right, Matt Taibbi is the next one I have here. Just to quickly mention him, I could go into him further, but he was a pretty decent journalist. Like, he was actually well respected in during 2008 and all that. He covered Wall Street back in the day, but he's basically shifted into just covering all this culture war crap. That's all he does. He criticizes the left for the culture war crap. The same thing the next contestant here, Glenn Greenwald, does. Like I said, both of these guys have opinions I agree with and have done good work in the past specifically, but these days, like, they've gained a huge right-wing following by criticizing the left, and I think that's why they're going down this road, because they're getting clicks, man.
Yeah, I'm not as familiar with Greenwald. Matt Taibbi, I've followed him for a long time. I'm not... The path he took, so he was a writer for Rolling Stone, did a lot of great work. Do you know why he left Rolling Stone?
No.
Him and Katie Halper. So he talked about this a bit on his podcast, Useful Idiots. And there was only one article, him and Katie Halper were writing this article together. There was one article that he ever got pushback on Rolling Stone from about writing. Or they basically said, hey, we don't want you doing this. And it was him talking about kind of the subjugation of Palestine. So that's why he left there, started his own thing. Yeah, I don't know. I think Matt Taibbi, I feel like he's got his liberal bona fides. He talks a lot about liberal media idiocy and the kind of groupthink that goes on in some of these circles. MSNBC, for example, he talked a lot about that. But I think my reading of it is it's more just a personal interest to him, and it's something that he happens to know a lot about because he come out of that shithole, so to speak. I mean, that was the reason he left Rolling Stone in the first place, and I think he knows a lot of these people, so he's knowledgeable about it. He points a lot of this stuff out. The whole Russiagate thing has been something he's been on for a while. Kind of tooting that horn that this was a big made-up thing, and all the liberal media, or much of the liberal media, kind of jumped on board, and now it's falling apart, and nobody's trying to rectify it. They're just trying to find scapegoats and get out taking any responsibility. So,
well, I would question how much of it is falling apart. For one, for two, I can kind of get on board with you, but like I said, I kind of quit watching his stuff because he just went down this road of like covering MSNBC all the time and like. These like liberal outlets, like, we all hate the liberal press. We know, we get it. Who cares? Why are you covering this shit? There's more important things going on in the world. That's my issue. There's much more important things to be covering. Nobody cares about MSNBC at this point. Well, they have less followers than fucking anybody. They have less followers than Glenn Greenwald.
I think he's kind of got different outlets, and he does uses each one for different purposes. But,
it seems like culture war to me is all it seems like.
Yeah.
Sort of non-issues.
There's a lot of it, but no, like the podcast recently about oil drilling, Biden shilling for the oil companies. A lot about Biden, Facebook stuff, COVID vaccines. Yeah, how the 24 hours
looks about like these other guys on the list, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, he made the first COVID vaccine. They shut him down. So it's just about people developing them and getting fucked over by big pharma, essentially. It's a good list of stuff. I feel like
I can't stand him these days. I think he's off on the deep end, man. That's not what's important right now. But anyway, we need to move it along here. Because I do want to cover the Russiagate stuff. I want to talk about Aaron Maté, of course. Here's the thing. In the left-wing online circles, there is this huge group of people who are just completely convinced that Aaron Maté is right about all this Russia shit. And I heavily disagree. I think if you look at the evidence, it's pretty obvious that Aaron Maté is basically a shill for Putin at this point. He defended Assad constantly. He, denies the Uyghur genocide. We'll get into some of it here. He is a former contributor to The Nation magazine. He used to be on Democracy Now! And The Real News, so he does have the bona fides, sort of like, Taibbi or these other guys. Like I said, he's basically a shill. Anyone who is opposed to the U.S. is who he supports. So he does good work. The Gray Zone covered Venezuela quite a bit, which I agree with a lot of their stuff there. But when it comes to some of this other stuff, it's ridiculous. He denied that Assad committed war crimes in the Syrian civil war, which it's very well documented they did. But specifically, we could talk about that some other time. Specifically, I wanted to talk about Russiagate this week.
What exactly is Russiagate?
To me, Russiagate is the allegation that Russia, according to U.S. intelligence officials, waged this sweeping interference campaign in 2016 via hacked emails and social media posts with the aim of sowing chaos in the U.S. and installing Donald Trump in the White House. And furthermore, the suspicion that Donald Trump and his campaign conspired with this sweeping Russian campaign. There was a quid pro quo, or Vladimir Putin has a P-tape of Donald Trump and used that to blackmail him. That Russia basically invaded us with their troll army and their email hackers, and they did so in concert in a grand conspiracy with Donald Trump.
So he defines it very narrowly here. This is not actually what it means. If you look at the definition, it's much more broad. So this is from Wiktionary. This is the 2016. The controversy that ensued since the 2016 U.S. presidential election about purported links between Russian actors and Donald Trump, his campaign, and his subsequent administration. So yeah, there is reams and reams of evidence to back this up. We'll go into a little bit of it here. On various occasions, Trump lied about knowing Putin. He stated multiple times before the campaign, multiple times he stated publicly that I do have a relationship with Putin. I met him once, and I spoke indirectly and directly with President Putin, who could not have been nicer. However, during the 2016 campaign, he suddenly changed his stance, and in this press conference in July, he claimed, quote, I never met Putin. I don't know who Putin is. Never spoke to him. During another interview, Trump said, I have no relationship with him. So Trump does have a relationship with Putin and his operatives. He actually first met with KGB in 1986, and he admitted as such in his book, Art of the Deal. So we have various people that are connected. There's a bunch of them.
I was going to say, I think this essentially comes down to what we are going to define as Russiagate.
Sure.
Yeah, dude. Trump's a liar, and Trump probably talked to Putin at some point, and Putin probably tried to influence him at some point. I think with the Russiagate, it's more specifically about the P-tape stuff. This guy's had stuff pulled up, and that he was the idea that he was a Manchurian candidate. And yeah, so that was my understanding. That's what the push of what the whole Steele dossier, what the Steele dossier was that he was actually being directly influenced, not that he didn't have some contact with the guy in the past and lied about it.
All right, so some of the ties here. Michael Flynn lied about receiving $45,000 from RT in 2015. He's also had other contacts. He pled guilty to lying to the FBI and was pardoned by Trump. Jared Kushner, his son-in-law and senior advisor, lied on his security clearance application about numerous meetings with Russian officials, including a representative from a Russian state bank. Jeff Sessions, during his confirmation hearing, he lied about two 2016 meetings with a Russian ambassador. He later recused himself from the Mueller report investigation. Rex Tillerson, former Exxon CEO who has close ties to Putin. He was once awarded Russia's highest honor given to foreign citizens. Paul Manafort, he was the chairman of the Trump campaign. In 2017, he was indicted on federal charges, 12 criminal charges, including conspiracy, money laundering, failure to register as an agent of foreign power, and false statements. These charges were unconnected to the Trump campaign. However, in 2018, Manafort was additionally indicted for 32 federal charges, including tax evasion, money laundering, and fraud relating to their foreign lobbying, before and after the election. He was later indicted on 2 additional charges related to pro-Russia lobbying. There's this character Carter Page, who was a Trump foreign policy advisor, who was used to be an investment banker in Moscow. There's Roger Stone, former Trump advisor and Republican strategist, dating back to Richard Nixon. In 2019, Stone was arrested and charged in an indictment with witness tampering, obstructing an official proceeding, and 5 counts of making false statements. In 2017, CNN reported that Roger Stone had discussions with several of his Republican friends that detailed meetings he had had with Julian Assange and knowledge of the upcoming email leaks. This is getting into this Tower meeting that we'll talk about in a second here. Don Jr., this was the Tower meeting between Jared Kushner, Paul Manafort, and Russian lawyer Natalia Veselnitskaya, and a Russian-American lobbyist, Rinat Akhmetson, who has ties to Russian intelligence. And there's this email. This British publicist supposedly set all this up. And in this email, Rob Goldstone, the publicist, wrote that Russian contacts were in possession of, quote, sensitive information supplied by the Kremlin on Democratic rival Hillary Clinton. Trump Jr. responded, if you'll recall, quote, if it's what you say, I love it. Later on, Veselnitskaya produced the English translation of this outline supposedly she had from the meeting, which exonerates Trump and her of any of wrongdoing. But yeah, very suspicious situation there. And we might get into the Tower meeting a bit more. There's Michael Cohen, of course, his personal lawyer during the campaign. He's the one who provided a lot of the testimony to the Mueller report. This guy is not somebody you want on your bad side, right?
Sometime in the summer of 2017.
Yeah, he seems like
I read all over the
not a good friend, I'll say.
Media that there had been a meeting in Trump Tower in June of 2016 involving Don Jr. and others from the campaign with Russians, including a representative of the Russian government, and an email setting up the meeting with the subject line, Dirt on Hillary Clinton. Something clicked in my mind. I remembered being in a room with Mr. Trump, probably in early June of 2016, when something peculiar happened. Don Trump Jr. came into the room and walked behind his father's desk, which in and of itself was unusual. People didn't just walk behind Mr. Trump's desk to talk to him. And I recall Don Jr. leaning over to his father and speaking in a low voice, which I could clearly hear, and saying, the meeting is all set. And I remember Mr. Trump saying, okay, good, let me know.
This is the hardest I've ever seen anybody flip on anybody else, I think. This guy just made the rounds for years. But he just made the rounds for years like shitting on Trump. He spilled every bean.
Well, and to be fair, Trump did basically disavow him first, right?
Yeah, he shit on him. I don't remember what it was. He fired him. I don't remember why. Yeah, he fired everybody.
He wanted him to pay his bill, probably.
When I did that fascism video, I had a clip in there about how all the people Trump had fired, he fired like 4 times as many people as like any other president since going back for decades.
Still stuck on the reality show. You fired.
You think that's what it is? I just feel like he's a freaking authoritarian.
Yeah.
You looked at me wrong.
You're fired. A little bit. You're fired. You're fired.
Okay, let's talk about the Russian meddling, the IRA, the Russian troll farm. This is coordinated with state media. They pumped out a bunch of Trump propaganda during the campaign. Russian military hackers hacked the DNC chair. of John Podesta had released all the emails, the Hillary emails. Various Russians contacted several Trump campaign officials and offered them business opportunities at the same time. And Russia has denied involvement in the hacks and leaks, of course. And then there was the Mueller report. Shortly after Trump fired the director of the FBI, James Comey, for investigating him, Deputy Attorney General appointed Robert Mueller to investigate Trump. The special counsel investigation ran from 2017 to May 2019 and resulted in 34 indictments, including against several former members of the Trump campaign. The investigation found that there were at least 170 contacts between Trump or 18 of his associates with Russian nationals and WikiLeaks, or their intermediaries. The investigation applied the framework of conspiracy law, and not the concept of, quote, collusion, because collusion is not a specific offense or theory of liability found in the United States Code. So this is quoting the Mueller report here. Volume 1, quote, of the report concludes that the investigation did not find sufficient evidence that the campaign, quote, coordinated or conspired with the Russian government in its election interference activities. The investigation did not always yield admissible information or testimony because some individuals invoked their Fifth Amendment right, numerous witnesses and subjects lived abroad and documents were held outside the U.S., some of those investigated deleted relevant communications or communicated during the relevant period using applications that feature encryption or that do not provide for long-term retention of data or communications records. The report also states that Russian interference in the 2016 presidential election was illegal and occurred, quote, in a sweeping and systemic fashion. Trump and many of his supporters have falsely claimed that there was, quote, no collusion, even though Mueller made no conclusion about collusion, only about conspiracy or coordination. All right. This is quoting from the Moscow Project, which I just referenced. It is a DNC. This is similar to like the Steele dossier, which was funded by the Clintons. So I'm quoting now from the Moscow Project. In 173 pages on Russian interference, Mueller identified constant contact and interaction between the Russian campaign to elect Donald Trump and the Trump campaign. Mueller found clear evidence of collusion, as the examples below demonstrate. And they gave 6 examples in this article. Mueller decided not to prosecute for criminal conspiracy based on a very narrow prosecutorial standard that he clearly laid out in the report. However, it is abundantly clear that the Trump campaign colluded with Russia to interfere in the 2016 election. Now, he didn't indict Trump or on collusion because collusion is not a charge, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it seems pretty obvious that there was tons of collusion. Now, whether or not there's an explicit quid pro quo is sort of irrelevant. I mean, Trump has a bunch of Russian money in his real estate holdings that is probably, money laundering, presumably, who knows. But, I mean, to say that Russiagate is a complete farce and it's all a house of cards that came tumbling down is absolutely ridiculous, in my opinion.
Okay, when they're saying that Russiagate, like, what are they talking about? Are they talking about all this, or just a specific part of it, like the Steele dossier?
Well, that's my question to you. Do you think that news organizations shouldn't cover all this shit because Mueller didn't find any legal way to prosecute Trump for collusion? Like, should MSNBC not report on any of this shit? I mean, I would love to know about this shit if I was reading the news. Just saying. 173 meetings with Russian officials.
I mean, yes, some of it's certainly relevant. I think everything that you mentioned, I guess, it seemed relevant. I don't really know. Like, I haven't followed this as well as I probably should have.
All these indictments for lying to the FBI, all these people surrounding Trump.
Yeah. Do you think that there was some smoke around the fire that might have been distracted and might have gotten brought up for salacious reasons, like the
If you listen to Michael Cohen, he's convinced because he said Trump knows everything that goes on in his enterprise, and he's stated that many times. I mean, I don't know. It seems like a stretch to say that all these news organizations shouldn't be covering this shit. That's all I'm saying.
I would have to dig into like the specific examples of what they were talking about. If they were, it would be something maybe we could do a follow up on. To see specifically what they were objecting to, because I feel like, if this is all widely accepted, known information, I don't know why somebody like Taibbi would be disputing it or would be taking issue with the reporting of it. So, I don't know. I'm talking about like Maté, because I know this is a big something that he kind of pushed back on.
He's buddies with Maté.
Hard. Yeah, he's with Maté on pushing back against the Russians. But like I said, it might be certain aspects of it. They may be defining Russiagate as the Steele dossier. I don't know, and without
they might be getting tons of clicks from the right wing because they're criticizing the left. Maybe that.
Oh. I think that's the least probable. That's the least probable of them.
Maté is a Uyghur genocide denier. Aaron Maté and Gray Zone are genocide denialists.
I have to read this quote from Trump from his Wall Street Journal transcript of his interview with the Wall Street Journal yesterday, just because it's kind of hilarious. They asked him about John Bolton, and he says, "Within a short period of time, as we all got to know him, because I didn't know him very well, I didn't know him at all before this, I figured, he's a hardliner. I like having a hardliner. He's a hardliner, but I call him a stupid liner because it was so foolish." It's just classic Trump. But what did you make of the Bolton allegations with regards to China? I mean, he didn't have, he didn't think very highly of the level of strategic thinking around the trade policy. He also talked about how Trump called Xi Jinping the greatest Chinese leader in 300 years, maybe of all time. But most significantly, seemed to indicate that Trump had basically given the green light, like, go ahead and do the concentration camps for Uyghur Muslim minority. That's what you should be doing, I think, is essentially what the quote was. What did you make of those allegations?
Well, first of all, I'm careful. I don't actually adopt the term concentration camps because to me that's a term that is associated with the Holocaust where people were mass murdered. And I don't think from what I know of what's happening in China, I don't think that term, it's fair to apply that term. Certainly there is repression of Uyghurs going on in China, but it's also a complicated issue where I think what you're seeing is neocons like John Bolton, who have their own imperial designs, exploiting internal divisions and unrest to pursue their own aims. And then
So pretty weak statement here, but he has a long history of denying what's going on with the Uyghurs. Look, the Uyghurs aren't being massacred, but that's not the definition of genocide. Their culture is being destroyed, basically. They're being forced sterilizations. China's increasing sterilizations in Xinjiang. Birth rate drops in Uyghur areas. So, yeah, it's...
Yeah, seems like a lot of the disagreements we have are just about definitional things. Concentration camp in my mind, or genocide in my mind, basically speaks to the systematic destruction or killing of a certain group of people. And if that's not what's happening, then maybe a different word would be better to use.
Maybe,
because you
but
bring up
what's
all those
the difference? Why would you even need to make a distinction if you support?
Because it's a different thing.
Is it?
Seems to be.
According to the UN, it's a genocide.
Is that what the UN says?
That's what their definition states. Yeah, the systematic destruction of a culture. They're forced sterilizations. They have them in these labor camps where they're separating families. They have them all like facial recognition. It's a crazy. I mean, look, it's not what happened to the Jews, but it meets the definition of genocide. You can't if you're on the left, which supposedly Aaron Maté and Matt Taibbi are on the left, we criticize the invasion of Afghanistan because you can't just go around murdering Muslims, right? This is the same thing that China's doing to the Uyghurs. It's the exact same thing. They claim they're terrorists because they blew up a bomb or something, and now they're just persecuting the entire population.
Like I said, I don't know much. Is Aaron Maté saying the way China treats him? Because he literally just did. He said, there's big problems. There's it's terrible how they're treating the Uyghur Muslims, but saying, hey, maybe we should be clear about the word usage when we're talking about these things, because these words are being what was he saying, like neocons like John Bolton are using this to kind of drum up gin up the war machine against China. Trying to get what I'm saying.
I agree with you. That's one case. I mean,
okay,
that was just one example.
Not agreeing with something is not denying it. I don't.
Sure, but Right, but when you have a long history of like these definitional things all related to like Putin and Assad and like the CPC, like you just all happen to support all these like authoritarian regimes that you probably get paid by under the table. It's just it's a you weave a pattern and then you see the picture, the bigger picture.
Maybe the pattern is that he's a journalist that's very clear about the language he uses, and he's got a certain niche that he falls into. I mean, his reporting. We'll not get into his reporting about Syria, but
the thing about Syria is the most egregious, in my view. He is single-handedly. He's the biggest spokesperson for this Assad conspiracy, trying to say that Assad didn't use chemical weapons on his own people, which he did. It's well documented. But he has a ton of people online convinced that Assad is this good guy and that Putin is this good guy. And because they're enemies of the U.S., they're automatically good. That's his whole thing. Anybody that is against the U.S. is good. I don't know if he's a cynical person or not. I think he probably is. Yeah. But he uses the left to gain a following. And he preys on their skepticism of U.S. foreign policy, which you should be skeptical of U.S. foreign policy, obviously. But
yeah, well, I know it was a Syria thing. It was based on the OPCW report, right? So it's not that he was saying he didn't use chemical weapons, that Assad didn't use chemical weapons. He was citing this independent organization saying they said he didn't use chemical weapons.
That's not what happened at all. That's not what it was.
Okay,
I'll explain it real quick. I'm
probably wrong.
They came out with the report. The OPCW report came out, and it said that Assad had used chemical weapons again. We already knew he used it 30-some times prior, but under the Trump administration, this was one specific case at Duma, and there was somehow it leaked to WikiLeaks, this one investigator's report, a draft report, that he wrote prior to the final report coming out that said that, in his opinion, it seemed more likely that the two canisters were placed there than fell from the sky. So it's indicating that potentially it was a false flag. So they couldn't use that report because the OPCW is not supposed to make a statement about who they think committed the crime. They're supposed to investigate the crime. So that draft got thrown out. And then it gets leaked to WikiLeaks later on, and it spawns this whole conspiracy theory. It's just a conspiracy theory is all it is.
I like my story better.
It's crazy how far it spread, dude. It's so popular. This people are convinced. They follow Aaron Maté and love this guy, and he is the figurehead of this Assad conspiracy theory. He started it, and he's like been pushing it. He was actually one of the sort of Assad had these quote unquote international monitors for the election, his sham election, which he look. I'll call out whether I think an election's sham or not. I think the Venezuelan elections are going to be legit. I think this was a sham election. And Aaron Maté was one of the international investigators, or international monitors, right? He had like a dozen monitors or something. It wasn't a real international monitoring situation with thousands of people like Venezuela's doing.
Yeah.
It was like 12 guys in a room, and Aaron Maté was one of them. Anyway, I wanted to play. Here's the this is Taibbi and this is Aaron Maté on Taibbi's show, I think.
For us, it always has been. We talked about it from the start, but we figured it would be great to wait for a moment when this story resurfaced in a huge way to have you on to help sort of walk folks through everything that's happened. And would you agree we're at one of those moments? I mean, in the last couple of weeks, we've seen court documents declassified, FBI notes declassified, 6,000 pages of court testimony. There's just a ton of stuff that, I think basically reduces the whole Russiagate story to rubble almost at this point. But could you walk us through what the main revelations of the last few weeks are?
One of the reasons why I was so opposed to Russiagate being the main focus for Trump's opposition for over 3 years is that, all the available evidence just showed how baseless it was. And it was pretty clear that once it collapsed, it would hand Trump two gifts. First of all, it would give him the gift of, throughout however long it took for this thing to end, Trump's resistance being distracted into, this dumb conspiracy theory that he conspired with or was blackmailed by Russia. And two, when it collapsed, it would give him the gift of vindication. And then as more and more evidence came out as to how this whole thing started, Trump would be able to exploit it and use it for his reelection campaign and say, look at how these people tried to stop me and how they.
So basically he's doing what Jimmy Dore does here. He's saying, oh no, I'm really against Trump. I just want the left to win. That's why I'm doing all this. That's what he's saying. That's the same thing Jimmy Dore does. This is called gaslighting.
I feel like the left-wing media has gone so crazy after the past couple of years. There are people like myself, and I know there's a lot of people. There's kind of a big exodus from TYT at one point. And there's a lot of people like myself and the other people that left TYT that have become so disillusioned with the crap that they see on these networks, and have just gotten very skeptical about anything I hear on left-wing media. And it's not because myself or other people are right-wingers now. It's that we want our side to be better. And I want these left-wing outlets to not peddle in conspiracies, not peddle in crap and bad arguments, and so that we can present a unified front to the right wing. I mean, it doesn't bother me when Fox News comes out with bullshit. When Rachel Maddow comes out with bullshit, that bothers me a lot more because she should know better, I guess is what I'm getting at. And I think pointing those things out and focusing on those things is healthy. It's, if you're going to get right-wing people, Tucker Carlson viewers are going to go, yeah, he's shitting on Rachel Maddow. Cool, I'm going to watch him now too. Well, so be it. But, it's important. It needs to be done. Supporting left-wing media that's doing stupid stuff just because they're on our side. I don't know. Is that should we not attack the left-wing media when they start going along with bullshit stories and making bad arguments?
I think you're being very charitable to these guys, in my opinion. Because this, first of all, TYT is not the same thing as MSNBC. There's a difference between corporate media and independent media. For one, Cenk Uygur's very quick to call out bullshit in the left-wing media. He just doesn't. That's not just all he talks about, though. There's a big difference there. It's one thing to attract over a few Tucker Carlson fans. It's another thing to attract over a few Tucker Carlson fans and then start talking like Tucker Carlson does.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know that he does. Obviously, there's the similarity I've seen between somebody like Maddow and Cenk Uygur isn't the source of their media. It's the bad arguments that they sometimes tend to make.
Cenk Uygur's had some bad takes, but he is, in general, his arguments are good, in my opinion.
He's had a lot of good. Maybe we could do a TYT show, and I could pull up some of my greatest hits of shitty Cenk arguments that he's made.
He's made some bad arguments and had some dumb takes, but he's done a lot of good work trying to gain support for the Justice Democrats. He's done more than anybody. He's probably done more than anybody to actually change public policy in terms of the voting.
I hope that's his. Yeah, I hope that's his legacy, pushing for a constitutional amendment to get money out of politics and to stop corporate lobbying and Citizens United. It's all great stuff. I would agree with Cenk on most of the stuff. It's just that his bad takes are so overwhelmingly stupid that it's impossible for me to watch them.
You have to show me them because I haven't seen any that bad. I mean, I've seen some dumb ones.
Oh, I've seen. Yeah, I haven't watched them really in years. So
I know back in the day he had some bad takes on like some foreign policy stuff. In fact, speaking of TYT, here's Aaron Maté on TYT
2.0, and they register the website dcleaks.com, etc. I have no reason to disbelieve that. Do you have a reason to disbelieve that?
I don't have a reason to disbelieve it in the sense that I actually haven't gone.
He's talking about the hacking, the hacker, the details about the hacker, basically.
Deep into this issue. I don't doubt that it very well could have been the Russians, but my position is I'm also not going to take it just because they tell me it's true. So I don't doubt it, but I also don't automatically embrace it. I think it's quite possible the Russians did steal the emails. And if so, people should be held accountable for it. But I think that, we haven't seen very much evidence. Pretty much the only evidence we've actually seen is Mueller indicting Russian military intelligence officers. And he lays out in that indictment a very detailed case. And so that is something, because basically for that not to be true, Mueller would either have to be making it up or be relying on faulty evidence. But because we haven't seen that evidence itself yet, I'm just not going to automatically believe it. But I'm
just asking questions, bro. Just asking questions. Do your own research.
Yeah, and it sucks too, because, you know, there are people that are honestly asking questions, and then there's Alex Jones. And
because I think that the Democratic establishment and a lot of people in the media, Rachel Maddow, have overhyped the collusion in the election. Okay, yeah. But what I'm concerned about is Donald Trump's deep ties to the Russians throughout his business career, which I'm worried has affected what he has done in office. So, for example, the Russians, they do the Trump Tower meeting. So Don Jr., Manafort, Kushner go there, but the Russians don't give them any information. Now, Donald Trump Jr., upon hearing the email that the Russians are going to give them information, goes, I love it. Yeah. Incredibly stupid thing to say. That would have been collusion, but the Russians didn't give them the information. I think that gets them more compromising information on Trump.
But let me say, Jack, I don't think it would have been collusion, because, again, the email was written by who? A music publicist. Who,
but saying, I will connect you with Russian officials, and he goes, and they will give you information on Hillary Clinton. They have compromised. That would be a crime. There is no such crime as collusion, but there is a crime of conspiracy. There's a crime of.
Yeah, it's not. Basically, in this debate, Sank makes the point I'm making here, which is basically like, do we really need to be worrying whether or not this specific thing is technically collusion? I mean, isn't there a bigger picture to look at?
We would really have to go into specifics on what Aaron Maté or Matt Taibbi were specifically talking about with the Russiagate things. You know, the exact claims that they're making.
To me, it's not. The specifics aren't as important though. Aaron Maté going around talking about how he's being targeted in this McCarthyist fashion, which is absolutely not what that means. This is not McCarthyism, because Aaron Maté is not. Putin is not a communist, for one. It doesn't even make sense. Like, you're not being persecuted. You're defending Putin. So I just wanted to conclude this with basically, I think I've made this point before, but just because somebody is an enemy of the U.S. doesn't make them like a good actor in the world whatsoever. Like, the U.S. will bomb anybody. They don't care. They just want to blow up the bombs for Lockheed Martin to rebuild. You know, they don't care. You know, the U.S. supported the Kurds in Iraq. They've done good shit in the world at times, accidentally or intentionally. Isn't really relevant to them.
So yeah, Noam Chomsky, you can't just back whoever's against the U.S. Get it right, buddy.
Chomsky did have a bad take on the Assad thing when it first started, because before all the information came out. Yeah, he's old, man. Leave him alone.
He gets a pass.